stateside, though, and talk to us about this, right? Obviously, the president is still there, right? But Mike Waltz has got fired as the national security advisor. Rubio's taking over, Secretary of State Rubio's taking over temporarily. Potentially, I mean, what does something like this mean for relations with countries like South Korea, with Australia, allies, that is?
So I certainly think it contributes to the widespread impression of a lot of unpredictability and uncertainty in a Trump administration. The rumors in D.C. was that, Mike Waltz was a dead man walking. This transition to the UN is kind of a nice fig leaf of a way to ease him out. The vice president has talked about how this was the plan all along, that Waltz was in initially just to do some NSC reform and that he was going to be transitioned out anyway. But for allies and partners, it's a big concern. They're in the middle of these tariff negotiations with Korea and Japan and others. Besant is leading the negotiations, but still to not have coherence in the NSC, where the NSC is the one who brings together the interagency to tee up decisions for the president. That certainly can't make people feel very comfortable at all. Marco Rubio is now both the Secretary of State, he is the interim National Security Advisor, and he's also the interim USAID Administrator. So he effectively holds 3 cabinet-level positions all at the same time, which cannot be an easy thing to do either. So it's, there's quite a lot of flux here in Washington, D.C. that can't be comforting to allies and partners either.
Yeah, Victor, I was watching one of your more recent episodes of The Impossible State, your podcast, right? And old Kurt Campbell was on with you and talking about trilateral cooperation that's together with South Korea and Japan, et cetera. And I think you made the point, and talk to us about this, right? Especially in light of this leadership vacuum in South Korea now, and at least at the national security level in the U.S., you were saying that, look, the problem with South Korea is, for the U.S., it's sort of a single-issue ally. That is, look, it's always about, and probably likely will continue to be about, North Korea. And that is a very real threat, right? But until they can broaden their attention to just being land-based and start thinking about air and sea cooperation, meaning further down south, South China Sea, South Korea may not be as useful an ally. Talk us through that and explain what your thinking is.
Sure, Martin. I think you're right. I mean, when we look at South Korea, when South Korea sort of looks at their security perimeter, their policy spectrum of issues, they tend to be very Korea-focused, peninsula-focused. And one of the things about the trilateral with the U.S., Japan, and South Korea was to really broaden Korea's policy horizon, connect them to 2 global powers, the United States and Japan. And I think, we were seeing during the Yoon administration Korea much more on a global level. They were providing support to Ukraine. They were participating in G7 meetings. They were invited to the NATO Leaders Summit meetings in Madrid. They were really stepping out on a global stage. And the real question going forward, and what's at stake in this election, is that if they fall back to this sort of very narrow peninsular focus, that's not good for the United States. It's not good for Japan. It's not good for the world when all of the global governance structures, institutions have been under threat from China, Russia, and North Korea. And on the security picture, I think the Trump administration really wants to see the U.S. mission on the Korean Peninsula to be focused, as you said, more southwestern in direction. That is not a focus only on the threat from North Korea, but the threat from China. And they, I think, see Korea as one of the closest places to that particular contingency, and they're hoping that Korea can play more of a role. That's going to be a big decision for the next administration after it takes office in June in Korea.